Being a fundraiser is hard work. Not only is it time consuming, but you have to continually think of fresh and creative ways to engage your donors and supporters. If you need some fresh inspiration and ideas, check out Fundraiser Bot by Donor Perfect. Donor Perfect's Fundraiser Bot is more than just a free tool for nonprofits. It's your fundraising ally, offering you the freedom to focus on your mission while transforming your content creation process. With just a few clicks, you can generate outlines for meetings, emails, social media posts, blogs, text messages, and more. Try it for free at donorperfect.com/bot and let me know what you think. Now on to the show. Hello, and welcome to Nonprofit Nation. I'm your host, Julia Campbell, and I'm going to sit down with nonprofit industry experts, fundraisers, marketers, and everyone in between to get real and discuss what it takes to build that movement that you've been dreaming of. I created the Nonprofit Nation podcast to share practical wisdom and strategies to help you confidently find your voice, definitively grow your audience, and effectively build your movement. If you're a nonprofit newbie or an experienced professional who's looking to get more visibility, reach more people, and create even more impact, then you're in the right place. Let's get started. Hello, this is Nonprofit Nation with your host, Julia Campbell. And if you're like me, it might seem like the only thing anyone is talking about these days is AI, artificial intelligence, and the ways in which it is revolutionizing and changing work and impacting all industries, including the nonprofit sector. So today I want to go beyond the hype, and I really want to explore the implications for nonprofits, how to use AI not just to further productivity, but also to create more impact, and how it might help with the current generosity crisis. So who better to address these issues than Nathan Chappell? Nathan is one of the world's foremost experts on the intersection between AI and philanthropy. As the head of AI for DonorSearch, he leads the efforts to bring efficiency at scale through AI for many of the most innovative nonprofits in the US. Nathan presented the first TEDx on the topic of artificial intelligence and the future of generosity. He's also the co-author of the award-winning book, The Generosity Crisis: The Case for Radical Connection to Solve Humanity's Greatest Challenges. Welcome, Nathan, to the podcast.
Well, thanks for having me, Julia. It's so great to be here. I can't believe it's taken us this long to connect and have this conversation. It's definitely a thrill.
Yes, no, and it's all me, scheduling problems. Just blame me. But I want to start out talking about your TEDx talk, which I believe is the first way that I had heard of you. And it's called Artificial Intelligence and the Future of Generosity. And while that was in 2018, the fundamental questions that it raised, I think, are still very, very important and very relevant now. So this is the question: can artificial intelligence inspire generosity? What do you think?
I think it must. I was actually asked this question earlier today of whether or not I'm an optimist on philanthropy and AI, and those two things are a bit different, obviously. I think, being in the nonprofit sector for 20 years, working directly with the nonprofit sector, I think your natural orientation has to be optimism. And so as I think about, where we're at in society, and even though I wrote a book called The Generosity Crisis, which essentially guarantees that I'll never be invited to another dinner party, which is okay for me because I'm a total introvert. So that actually probably played into my hand very well. I still wake up every day with this idea that there's an inflection point and that things will change. And then as we talk about AI, and while AI has contributed to the generosity crisis through lots of things like social media we can dive into, it's also the only scalable solution to helping reverse the generosity crisis. So humans by nature, individually are not scalable. There are not a lot of scalable solutions out there. But, I started working in AI in 2017 out of pure frustration for the lack of innovation in our sector, and seeing how the private sector was using AI to better know their customers and better increase their lifetime value. And I saw a tremendous amount of application and promise that's what led to that TEDx, which was, it's crazy to think about how long ago that was, way before AI was like mainstream or cool. But while I understood that AI was contributing to some of these societal changes, that it also had tremendous promise. And then the third part, which was, with great prediction comes great responsibility. And that's what I spent a lot of my time, as within the foundation of fundraising AI, kind of promoting the responsible, beneficial use of AI.
Mm-hmm. So I would encourage everyone to go back and watch the TEDx talk, and it's still incredibly, incredibly relevant. And I do want to talk about a lot of the points that you made today. I'll put it in the show notes. I do also want to talk about the book. I read the book, and I actually was so funny is when I read it, I wrote down like a list of questions and things that I wanted to ask you about the book. But the first question is, what spurred you to write it? Like, why was it necessary to write a book about the generosity crisis?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And to be honest, writing a book was not a bucket list thing for me at all. It wasn't something that I was like, oh, when I grow up, I'm going to write a book and whatever. I just never really occurred to me. And I remember being in New York, probably 2018, actually, the year of the TEDx, where I was getting more into this. I'd been studying, the evolution of mega gifts for a long time. I actually, 2010, I started studying evolution of mega gifts. I actually wrote a paper on it in 2012. So that 2010 was when the Giving Pledge was actually created with Warren Buffett.
When you say, mega gifts, you're talking about like Mackenzie Scott kind of gifts?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So, not major gifts. It's different.
100 million or more. Yeah.
Okay.
So, or now I think a mega gift is actually categorized at 250 million or more. So it changes based on how the economy changes. And so, so back, going back 2010, Warren Buffett and Bill Gates were like, hey, we have this idea. We're going to create this Giving Pledge. And it's going to inspire people, especially high net worth people specifically, billionaires and half billionaires and above, to give away their money while they're alive, or at least half their money away while they're alive. And it wasn't a new concept. Actually, that concept was actually developed by Andrew Carnegie, who wrote a book called The Gospel of Wealth, which is a teeny little book. And although it has many outdated views on like entitlement of like wealthy people, it basically said that, people who die with money die disgraced, and that brave people are the ones that give away their money while they're alive, because they because they're like brave and they don't know if they're going to have enough to the end, and they see the impact that they make. So that came out in 2010. 2012, I wrote a paper on this evolution of mega gifts, and it was two-sided. And one side was like, this is going to be the coolest time to ever live in philanthropy. Like back in the early 1900s, Rockefeller and Carnegie were like, they were literally competing with each other of who could give away the most money and make the biggest impact. It was like really kind of exciting. Also a sign of huge inequality, right? But then there's like 100 years where that doesn't happen. And then 2010, it's like, oh, it's happening again. And I'm in philanthropy and my friends are in philanthropy. It's going to be a really cool time to be alive. And like philanthropy is going to be super in vogue, and it's going to inspire all these people to give away money. But it also was like, my pessimistic side was like, well, what if this has the opposite effect, which is like, what if this Giving Pledge kind of, quote unquote idea of, the giving away all this money essentially creates a case in which, well, Bill Gates is carrying portfolio, therefore what's my $50 going to do? So what we call the crowding out effect. And so it was kind of like, I wrote this study on basically both of these things, and I started presenting on it, like AFP chapters. And so honestly, for like a bunch of years, I was kind of going down this path, still looking at Giving USA and reading all the footnotes in Giving USA. And then it got to a point in like 2017, 2018, where I was like, someone needs to write a book about this. That total giving seemed to be resilient and was still 2.1% of the GDP, and was like by all accounts looked like it was thriving. And that's how it was portrayed through Giving USA. But I knew within my organization that we were essentially raising more money every year from less people, year over year over year. That was just the narrative. Like, we have to build, quote unquote, a better mousetrap, which is like my least favorite phrase in the entire universe.
Yes.
Speaking about donors. So I remember being in New York, and I actually, I was on stage talking about AI and how AI could actually do these cool things. And I said to the audience, I'm like, someone needs to write a book about this generosity crisis, and it's not going to be me. And so like 2 years goes by, nobody writes this book, and literally called it by name. And so decided with a friend of mine, actually two friends that came together and we started talking about this and ended up just like, okay, let's do it. No one else is doing it, so we should do it. And it's been an amazing journey, to be honest. It's exceeded every expectation that we would have had in terms of not inspiring more generosity, but creating a safe space to talk about generosity. And that was really what our definition of success was from the very beginning.
Mm-hmm. Wow. And you were saying earlier, and I know that it's in the book as well, social media has contributed to the generosity crisis. Now, I teach social media for nonprofits and I teach digital fundraising. So I just have some questions around that. What are you seeing? What did you see? And do you still think that, and social media is such a big, huge term.
Yeah.
But what are some ways maybe you see social media or AI contributing? And then we can talk about how it's driving social change.
Your eye twitch there when I talk about that. The reality is we're talking about like digitization, or whatever, how to say that word. It's the atomization of society, which is actually, started happening at the end of World War II. And the end of World War II, prior to World War II, there was just like a lot of this like coming together and supporting our community and neighbors helping neighbors and, sit on your porch after work and talk about how you're going to support your community. After that, something happened, which was essentially the television. It made its way into the family room. And from that time, instead of going home and sitting on the porch and talking to a neighbor, you went home after a long day's work, you put your feet up and you just like tuned into this, like this boob tube of like, I'm just, whatever's on, we're going to watch it and we're going to watch it as a family. And we know all the classic stories. So that really was what started this kind of like atomization of society and throughout that, many, many years, to the point where we all now have a television in our pocket, right? And the average person is within 4 feet of their phone 24 hours a day and scrolls 300 feet on their phone a day and sees 5,000 to 7,000 ad images a day, let alone all the other things that we have 80 apps and 12 subscriptions. Is that, social media, while it was supposed to be like the greatest community builder of all community builders, has also had unintended unintended consequences and adverse impacts on things like teen suicide and depression and anxiety and happiness. And so while any technology is neither good or bad, essentially the people who were programming social media from the beginning essentially programmed algorithms that were essentially built to capture attention. And if they captured an ounce of attention, they were rewarded and they would continue to do more of that. And if they didn't capture attention, they would refine themselves to figure out how to capture attention. So this, fast forward from a social media perspective, Tristan Harris, who's a really brilliant speaker on this, who runs the Center for Humane Technology, and he advises the White House and, others on these types of technologies, essentially came out in 2020 and said, the way that we should think about algorithms and social media is this idea that it's a race to the bottom of the brainstem. And the race to the bottom of the brainstem was talked about in The Social Dilemma, the movie that he helped co-create in 2020. And it really caught my attention because it's like, okay, well, the algorithm is essentially trained to essentially turn me into a zombie, and it's rewarded if it does. And then fast forward to 2023, he was speaking at, I think it was a university, and said, well, you know what? Things have advanced so quickly, this exponential technology. It's no longer a race to the bottom of the brainstem. It's a race to intimacy. And that really caught my attention because he was not speaking to nonprofits. He was speaking to for-profit entities and researchers and saying, look, like the way the algorithms are now rewarded is essentially creating an intimate relationship. And so while no technology is good or bad, I think there are definitely players that used it to sell more at any cost. And because social media has a tremendous power to communicate and a tremendous power to bring people together and to bring, inspire community if it's channeled the right way. And so that's where I think nonprofits right now have not only an opportunity, but also a responsibility to use this technology well in a way that fosters and engenders trust and not, transactions. So it brings people into relationship, into community. And if you evaluate what's good or bad, it's technology that brings people together. And so, I mean, I love that the use of the same technology for good or bad. And same thing as AI. AI has tremendous power to do harm and tremendous power to do good in the hands of the right people.
Yes. Oh, everything that you said. I completely believe that nonprofits have a responsibility to be on these platforms, to be countering misinformation, to be sharing news and education that is relevant and that is sort of counteracting all of the bad information or the misinformation, the myths and misconceptions out there. I 100% believe in the opportunity and responsibility. But also, of course, I have kids and I understand the detrimental effects of social media, and I'm not, sort of naive as to, what that means and how it matters. But exactly, I completely agree. So let's talk about AI as a catalyst and economic driver for societal change, because you've been a really outspoken advocate for that. So, I'm sure you have, entire talks around this, but what are some ways that you believe AI can serve these purposes?
Yeah, I mean, when we think about AI and we think about the nonprofit sector, it's almost like this marriage made in heaven, because on one hand, you have a technology that is largely built on the idea of efficiency. It's about taking all of the data in the world, and the average person by next year will interact with 5,000 algorithms per day. So, 10 years ago, that was about 300. So 5,000 algorithms per day. You and I are creating a digital exhaust everywhere we go.
I'm tired. I'm tired thinking.
No, for sure.
5,000 algorithms per day. Okay.
Farm and grow my own vegetables pretty soon. So so the digital exhaust that you and I are creating every day is just this massive potential. But at the same time, and that the potential of AI is to distill that digital exhaust and to make sense of it, to create tremendous efficiency around it. So that's like how AI is supposed to work. On the other hand, you have a nonprofit sector who's doing really good work that has way too much data for the resources that they have. They're under-resourced. They don't have the R&D budget. They don't have staff members that they need to really fulfill their mission. So, to me, it's like this amazing opportunity. It's like this technology that's built for efficiency, for a sector that needs efficiency more than any other sector in the world. Blend those two things together. I absolutely think that AI has tremendous potential. And we should clarify, because AI is kind of now a ubiquitous term that means everything and nothing. When I did my TED Talk was almost entirely related to predictive AI and natural language processing. So this machine learning and deep learning, which is about creating predictions and a lot of precision. So predictive AI creates predictions. It's about precision and it's about efficiency. And then, you have lots of other forms of AI. So natural language processing, which was the precursor for generative AI. But then there's not weird offshoots of it, like NFTs, like non-fungible tokens, which gets into blockchain and how data is transmitted safely, and augmented reality and virtual reality. So all those now, it's super confusing for most people, because AI is everything and nothing. Elon Musk is I created.
It's like the internet. Yeah,
I know. Well, yeah, an Al Gore created the internet. So Sam Altman's I created AI, and Elon Musk is I created AI, and Microsoft's well, actually we did, but Google actually did more. And so I think what people need to just understand all of this to say is that there's different forms for different uses. If I want to predict things, I use predictive AI. And that really is I have so much data, I need clarity around that data, I need to take action. But those predictions by themselves don't do anything. They just sit in an Excel sheet or in some kind of tool, and they don't do anything on their own. But generative AI, on the other hand, which is the most transformative technology breakthrough in the history of humans by far, is, and completely will transform every aspect of society at large, is about generating new things. So generative AI is about generating things, it's about creating. But creating new things just on their own would be okay, well, we have this tool now. Let's just send out 5 times more emails, or let's just send out 5 times more social media posts. We already living in this world where we can't absorb anymore. Attention span is 25% less than it was 20 years ago, which is our attention span is less than a goldfish at this point, which is 8 seconds, which from 12 seconds 20 years ago, that's an insane reality. We can't pay attention more. To your point, we don't want more. People don't want more. We want better. So the true idea, and we started using this term back in like 2017 when I was working machine learning at a cancer hospital, was precision philanthropy. And it was this idea that like we could create precision through predictive AI, and then we can activate that precision now through generative AI. So we talked about this for a long time, but it wasn't really possible. But now it's for real. Like now it's like, hey, precision philanthropy opportunity, the idea of micro-segmentation, of like understanding you as an individual and what does your data say and what are the motivations to connect you to a community, not just you as a persona or you as like a large group of people that are your age with certain age of kids and things like that, but like you as an individual based on your specific data. Precision philanthropy is here today. That's super, super exciting. Like we've been waiting for that day. Like we know more about the motivations of giving than we've ever known in the history of humans, which by the way has nothing to do with how wealthy you are, has everything to do with like how much you're raising your hand and leaning into an organization, how connected you are to that organization, whether you'll go the distance with them. So, back to the original question, like I remain so optimistic about, and excited about this idea of precision and creation, predictive AI, generative AI together to absolutely transform everything we ever thought we knew about fundraising.
Right. Wow. Okay. Well, how do you feel like it's going to transform it?
So this will be the biggest, the next 3 to 5 years will actually set in motion the future of the nonprofit sector. And I had a lot of time to reflect on this. And it was Citibank Global does a global philanthropy report. Like they look at the whole world and like where philanthropy is going in developed nations and in the global south and things like that. And they asked me to write about the future of fundraising, philanthropy in AI in 300 words or less. Which like,
wow.
Like as a task, like it's like, okay, well, give me 3 pages, and I'm like, I can put something together, and I'll make a case for why this thing. But I honestly, like, I sat for like 2 weeks and just like sat, and I was like I had to really, really think through, like, what are the, like, if I was going to reverse engineer the future of generosity over the next 3 to 5 years, like, what is the absolute imperative of like things that will happen or not happen. And I really had to come to the conclusion that the responsible adoption of AI will 100% define our sector in the next 3 to 5 years. And the reason why I came to that conclusion is that AI is unlike any other technology that's ever been created. So like while the internet changed every single person's job and the way we operate in society, families, friends, work, that the technology around the internet runs exactly the same way today as it did when it was created. It receives and sends data. It looks prettier. We got videos that you don't have to dial up anymore, but it literally operates exactly the same way today as it did, in the beginning. But AI is very different. So AI is considered an exponential technology in the sense that the worst AI will ever be is today.
Yes. You said that in a talk that I saw. You said the dumbest and the worst it will ever be is right now.
You have to assume it is because it's exponential technology, meaning AI actually trains AI. The internet doesn't train the internet. So all this to say is that when I had to come to this conclusion, it was because an exponential technology, and this is like almost double exponential. It's like it just like grows so quickly. I mean, every week something new is happening, and it's like not little things, like huge advancements in how this moves into robotics and how it moves into all the other things, is that what that has done is taking that digital divide. And we always thought about the digital divide of, in society of like 30% of the world still has no access to power. Like literally, like 30% of the humans on earth have no access to power. So the digital divide is like this thing of like this disparity of wealth versus non-wealth. But in a modern society, in developed nations, the digital divide is now not a divide, it's a chasm. That those that use AI will outpace and outperform those that do not in an exponential way. And every test that has been shown, whether it's white-collar workers or it's college students, in 2 control groups, one using AI and one not using AI, the ones using AI will not replace the others, but they will perform their work faster, of course. They'll perform it more accurately, and they'll perform it with a higher degree of satisfaction. So essentially less burnout. every single time. The studies have been like done all over the globe, and it's the same exact scenario. So that digital divide becomes a digital chasm. So nonprofits that use AI will absolutely, essentially replace those that are not. Or fundraisers, AI won't replace fundraisers, but fundraisers who use AI will outpace and replace those that don't. And we're already seeing this in the professional development field of like a fundraiser who embraces predictions and is closing more gifts faster at a higher average dollar than any of their counterparts will actually move up the ladder that much quicker. And so I think in our sector, the future is now, and we have to really look internally. Are we going to be in the sense of winners and losers in the digital divide? Which side are we going to be on? Because in an exponential technology, those that wait may never catch up. And that's not like a new thing. Like those that wait to adopt an exponential technology may never catch up because it's exponential. Those that embraced it 5 years ago are not 5 years ahead. They're like thousands of AI cycles ahead. So if someone, we work with a lot of nonprofits, hires us today, and then someone waits, is like, well, we're not ready. Our data's not ready. We're going to wait for a year. You're not 1 year behind. You're literally 365 training cycles behind someone who deployed a year ago. It's that fast. And so I think the future of fundraising is dependent on the next 3 to 5 years, how our sector leans in, gets uncomfortable, hopefully, and starts learning new things and providing, hiring new types of people, putting people at data at the seat at the table, and starts providing professional development opportunities that they haven't traditionally done.
Now, I can hear the heart rates racing of
I get passionate.
Fundraisers and marketers.
100%.
As I was listening, I'm thinking of my audience, and I'm thinking they're going to drive off the road because they'll be like, we're so behind. So I think my next question is around the overhead myth. And in your TEDx talk, you touch on it. I believe it's pervasive and destructive. I know you do as well. It prevents innovation in the sector. It creates this risk-averse culture. It creates this scarcity mindset that prevents us from investing in innovation. So how can we take this step if we are in this culture or working in an organization that is so risk-averse, scared of technology, and can't invest in innovation?
Well, I'll take it from a macro perspective and then a micro, like a very practical side of this. So, there is definitely reason. This is also, a passion thing for me. We talk about it in our book. We actually talk about Charity Navigator by name in our book.
Yes. Oh, and I know. And you met with the CEO, and then she kind of changed your mind around that. That's a great story.
It's interesting. So, I spent 20 years as a fundraiser, and as a technologist. So before I got into nonprofit, I started and sold 2 tech companies. So like my orientation is really around like how can tech, transform operations? How can it, create efficiency? And so while I spent 20 years in nonprofit, I was always had this different orientation. I always had this like tech first orientation of like let's get rid of manual processes. And that wasn't very popular 25 years ago when I started. But I would say the biggest limitation throughout my career in nonprofit was like this idea of like R&D, that nonprofits don't invest in things that aren't like a sure thing. And so, that's like, when I go around the country and I speak, I did this yesterday when I was doing a keynote, and I was like, how many people have a philanthropic R&D budget? And literally every time, 100% of the time, I'll hear laughter from the audience. It's not intended to be a joke. The reality is like John Deere, a 100-year-old tractor company, spent $1.6 billion last year in R&D, which essentially means like trying things that haven't been done, and failing fast. So the overhead aspect is one of the biggest reasons, right? If during my career, my success in part was measured by how much money did I raise and how efficiently did I raise that money. Was I at my 20 cents per dollar, cost per dollar raised? And if not, like I had to write white papers to the board or to the finance committee or to a donor and be like, this is why, because we had to hire new people. And that unfortunately is something that every nonprofit leader has to deal with. And that framework is broken. I was asked by Charity Navigator to fly to New York last week They bought a copy of the book for all the board members. It was a board retreat.
Ooh, yeah. I saw this LinkedIn post. It's amazing. It was so great.
Of all the things that have happened since we wrote the book, it was probably the most rewarding because we had this like very authentic but constructive conversation. And they're like, hey, you mentioned Charity Navigator by name in your book. Like, what was the reason why? And I was like, 20 years in the nonprofit, I hated you. Like, this is a reason why. And these are because you talked about overhead and you instilled this sense. The sad thing about this, it's not just Charity Navigator. And actually, to be honest, Michael Thatcher at Charity Navigator has a totally different vision for the future. We're talking about measuring things like retention and lifetime value. So relationships over revenue. And so extremely constructive. And they're really owning their part in that and really trying to change the narrative. But it's going to take a bit. But then, I don't know if you saw the podcast by Simon Sinek. And
I did. I wrote a LinkedIn post that I think got the most comments I've ever received.
Yeah, to me, that was worse, right? So to me, Simon Sinek, Scott Harrison, and it's worse on every account. So there's this part of Simon Sinek who I've always loved, and I've bought copies of the book for all my employees before, and like I've been a fan for a long time. Has this very naive and uninformed, to say, view of how nonprofits operate. But the worst part for me was actually Scott Harrison's not contradicting Simon and educating them and actually perpetuating this thing of nonprofits, nobody trusts nonprofits. And so, so this doesn't just live with the Charity Navigator, that framework of like that orientation of overhead being a bad thing. It's also within our sector, which is very divisive. So all that to say is that those are also very big limitations of like, well, if I'm a nonprofit, like how do I invest in something different? How do I invest in something new? And for many years, AI was so out of reach and so expensive and so, unproven that only the wealthiest nonprofits could afford it. And I've been doing this since, 2017, and we work with very large nonprofits in the very beginning. And so a small nonprofit would be like, well, when's my turn? And I'm like, you're going to have to wait, because honestly, this is how all technology is, kind of done, is that the people with more money have to like kind of break the code and get it cheaper. But fast forward to today, we have different forms of AI, both on the machine learning and predictive side and the generative AI side, that are insanely affordable, insanely cheap. Data's cheap, compute power is cheap. All the confluence of those things together, data and compute power being affordable, every nonprofit today has the ability to compete in a way they never could have before. And generative AI alone, so the lowest common denominator is like, I have no money to spend on anything, is a nonprofit. Say a fundraiser, it's kind of like when I started out, I was with Boys and Girls Club. So I was like a grant writer, a fundraiser, a games room person that had to create new things. Like I was everything. Like I was, had to do it all. And, to be honest, if I was sitting there today with ChatGPT, even the free version, which if anyone can tell me how you're spending $20 a month on something better than ChatGPT, I'd love to know what it is, because it's an amazing tool, just in that or any of them that you're going to use. You now have a fundraising coach, a fundraising consultant, you have a grant writer, you have a social media
an assistant,
someone to help you in all those domains. And so, again, I think if there was any kind of overwhelm of like, hey, look, your cheese is gone. Like it's not, they didn't move it. Like your cheese is like in another country and you're never getting it back. Like get used to that. It's not coming back. So if I'm waking up every day and like feeling overwhelmed of like, is this thing good or bad or whatever, and I'm paralyzed, don't want to use it, you have to spend 10 hours with it. Like the golden rule is like spend 10 hours in generative AI, assume it knows something about everything, and remain the human in the loop. So like make sure that you're the person that's like you're managing it. And, and make sure that you're verifying it. And I don't take a trust and verify approach to generative AI. I take a verify then trust approach.
Yes.
Because we're in the business of trust. That's so important. But all those things are like insanely practical things. Like if you're an organization with no money, you have opportunities. If you're an organization with a little bit of money, you have even more opportunities. And if you have a lot of money, then invest a lot of stuff in like the future and, all of that. But it's now democratized for everyone, which I think is super exciting.
I love that. I think what you said is so important. Just, it's always the fear of the unknown. It's the fear of what we don't know and the fear of just, what we've heard in the news or, the doomsday sort of headlines. But I agree with that. I always tell my clients, I say, if you are thinking about, generative AI, just go in there and have it create like a meal plan for you,
right.
Or have it create like a homework schedule for your kids or something that's kind of innocuous and harmless. And you'll see the power and then you'll start to learn how to use it. And this is the whole piece as well. Even just investing some time into your own professional development, going to conferences, or if you can't go to conferences, taking webinars, reading books, listening to podcasts, and being curious about some of these uses, I think is going to really help. It's going to really help alleviate that fear.
Yeah.
Now, I know we're coming up at time. I literally have 20 more questions, but we'll have to have you in the podcast again. I want to talk about fundraising.ai, which you co-founded, and the summit is coming up in October. Tell me all the things. Why is such a group necessary? Who's involved? And tell me about the summit.
Yeah, well, fundraising AI, is the most grassrootsy kind of thing you could ever do. It was really, started out back in 2019 with a group of concerned people, about 125 people I had in an Excel spreadsheet of like, hey, we're all seeing the promise and also the potential for harm, in AI in the sector. So why don't we get together and try to do something about it? And then fast forward, to November 2022 when GPT came out. It just blew up. Last year, we had our first global summit, which we had 6,000 people from 84 countries. It's all sponsor supported. It's entirely free. People can go to fundraising.ai. They can download the first framework for responsible AI built specifically to the nonprofit sector. It's really this idea that you're not alone. Like if you're not sure where to start on this journey, fundraising AI is that voice for you and with you and that partner with you. There's 54 hours of video content. I know you were a big part of it last year. And helping host and navigate those conversations, which is awesome. All those videos are there for free and all sponsor supported from amazing sponsors who are recognizing that this is an important thing to do. This year, it's on October 1st. We're expecting 10,000 people from over 100 countries. We have an amazing partnership, obviously, with Giving Tuesday again this year and Resource Alliance in the UK. And these are just two amazing communities that are looking for answers to like do things differently and mitigate the risks and help to do this, not just in a ethical way and not just in a responsible way, but a responsible and beneficial way. And that's something that's so unique to our sector. We're not selling products or services. We're essentially exchanging trust for money. And with that said, we can't just rely on things that are ethical and secure and private, that they have to be beneficial to the future of humanity as well. That's something wholly unique to the nonprofit sector. I'm really proud of our stance on responsible and beneficial AI. You don't see it anywhere else. And so we're going to have the best speakers in the world from all over the world. Our expectation is we'll have speakers from 6 different continents, unless anyone can introduce me to a fundraiser in Iceland, like I would, or Antarctica. Sorry, I always Antarctica. That would be amazing. But outside of that, all the continents represented. So we'll hear about innovations from the global south and from other parts of the world where you're seeing like true innovations happening. So that's going to happen. And then in a company to that, because that's just a one day kind of thing where it's just like, we'll go super deep and we've got learning tracks this year for like beginner, medium, and expert. So you can kind of dive into the areas that you're looking for. We also launched the Fundraising AI podcast, which is a weekly podcast that I co-host with Scott Rosencrantz. And that's really kind of just to distill the 15 hours of stuff that I read and listen to every week into 30 minutes. Because
I love that.
Earlier, when you're talking about the overwhelm is real and things change in AI so fast that you don't know what to pay attention to and you just sometimes become numb to it. So Scott and I break this down around the idea of applied AI, so the application of AI specific to the fundraising sector. So we don't highlight things that aren't needed at all, but things that you should think about, in the fundraising context. So that with a couple of in-person events with the summit, it's all there. People can register for it. The theme this year is called Generate Good, off the generative AI theme. We're super, super excited about it. And, people can register for free right now, as they should, and get this on your calendar way in advance.
Fundraising.ai. and just go. You'll find all of the things, all the resources, info about the summit. I'll put all the links in the show notes. And I will say to people listening that are feeling a little overwhelmed, what the Fundraising AI Summit did so well last year. Mallory Erickson was the MC, and she really cultivated this collection of fundraisers that would be familiar to people. So if they were a little intimidated and they felt like, oh, I can't attend an AI summit. I don't know enough, and I'm not comfortable enough. So there's just such a diversity of voices represented, and people that know the sector and truly care about using these tools for good and generating good. And I love that theme. So thank you. A lot
of fun. We can't wait. We're going to have a lot of fun with it and leveling up in so many ways, this year. And again, thanks to the sponsors who you can see on the website as well that have stepped up in a big way for really very little in return. Like they're just like, this is an important thing. This has the potential to shape humanity, not just nonprofits, but through nonprofits, humanity at large. And, those organizations know that they're not just doing it on their own, that they need to really scale the responsible, beneficial AI movement. So it's one of the most rewarding, volunteer side hustle things I've ever done. I mean, definitely the most rewarding. And I hope people jump in there and join us.
And Nathan, where can people find you online? I know you're on LinkedIn.
Yeah, LinkedIn pretty much is it. That's like my only kind of a vehicle. So LinkedIn, Nathan Chappell, Fundraising AI is also on LinkedIn, so they can find me. Definitely, I love to connect with people on LinkedIn. I'm really, I just like you, built such an amazing community of nonprofit professionals. And I think we just, we're all kind of equally yoked in that sense of, thinking a bit more beyond ourselves and even our time here on earth and beyond. And it's just, there's a lot of comfort in that. So I love that.
Thank you so much. We're at time. So until next time, but thank you, Nathan, for being on the podcast.
Oh, great. Thanks for having me, Julia. And thanks for, for all you do for our sector and bringing people together in community. I know it's just so inspiring to see how many people really follow you and really lean in community with you. So it's awesome. It's been an inspiration to me and so many other people.
Well, hey there. I wanted to say thank you for tuning into my show and for listening all the way to the end. If you really enjoyed today's conversation, make sure to subscribe to the show in your favorite podcast app, and you'll get new episodes downloaded as soon as they come out. I would love if you left me a rating or a review, because this tells other people that my podcast is worth listening to. And then me and my guests can reach even more earbuds and create even more impact. So that's pretty much it. I'll be back soon with a brand new episode. But until then, you can find me on Instagram at JuliaCampbell77. Keep changing the world, you nonprofit unicorn.